Welcome to this edition of the Virtual Book Festival, recorded on May 28, 2020, sponsored by the Book Festival Network and Dear Texas. This is produced by Book Festival Network, a division of Dear Texas and Dear Indie. This show is sponsored by Authors Marketing Guild. We're a membership-owned company that helps authors learn how to market and sell themselves. Also by indielector.store, the only bookstore that offers up to 80% of its sales to authors directly. And produced by Dear Indie and Dear Texas, where we drop everything and read both Texas and indie authors. So welcome, Lorrie. How are you?
Doing fine. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm a member also of the Authors Marketing Guild. I'm Lorrie Parise, and I like to say I'm the everyday author, a biography of an everyday couple, turning ordinary into inspirational. The book is nonfiction, and it is about my parents. And I use the term everyday because they weren't a movie star or they weren't an athlete, but they were an everyday, ordinary couple who just so happened to be extraordinary. And I wanted people to know that you can be a role model. You don't have to be the athletes. You don't have to be the movie star to make a difference in people's lives. And that's what they did. They inspired people along the way. They inspired their family. They inspired their friends. And I want to just take a few moments to introduce them. First, meet Mom. She is far from ordinary. She is Alice. Her dark curly hair amidst patches of gray contrast her pale complexion and bring out the features of a stunning woman who happens to be my mother. And her eyes? Many doctors have commented that eyes are never supposed to be truly black in color, yet hers are black. The twinkle of her smile can melt a person away, and her smile accents her rosy cheek. And that's my mother, and I describe her further in the book and her aches and pains. But she also loved my father so much, and I'd like to introduce you to my father, Fidel. Alice glanced up again. There was my father, Fidel, a thin man with a ruddy complexion and salt and pepper hair, the man she had married 63 and a half years ago. He too hardly aged. I think they discovered the fountain of youth and didn't tell us. Well, my brother and I always said our parents never taught us Spanish so they could converse about us in what seemed like their own private language. We would never blame ourselves for not learning a language. That would be too simple. Well, if they had discovered the fountain of youth, rest assured they spoke about it in Spanish. And it's kind of an inside joke. My brother and I did not learn Spanish. It was a different time. It was a time where parents really didn't try to teach you the second language because they really wanted to fit in with society and they wanted their children to fit into society. My mother and father, as I mentioned, inspired me, and they always told me that you can take a person, that being a piece of clay, and shape it and mold it into the person you want them to become. And my mother told me that all the time, and she meant it, and my father told me that. And the reason it's so important is because I was adopted. So when I say turning ordinary into inspirational, I think I mean me the most. They inspired me the most. They also, like I mentioned, inspired family and friends along the way. But the book is more than just about inspiring people. It's also about a family coming together. My mother suddenly became ill, and it brought our family together. It also it's an honest depiction of dealing with death. And it's maybe a taboo subject, but it's not. When you have a togetherness and when you have closure, you learn to find a way, you learn to trust and let go of the person who is ill. Also, I wanted to share some behind the scenes about the book. So as I mentioned, it's inspiring and it also deals with death, but it is also a love story. So my mother became very ill suddenly. She went into about a week of hospice, and then we moved her home. She could barely speak. But one of the words that she spoke was the word Fidel. And she didn't even speak it. She actually spelled it out, Fidel. And that's a chapter in the book. And that's how they met. They actually met. It tells you a little bit about her spelling out the word, but they actually met at a dance. Now, it was an informal engagement party dance for my father. And he was actually engaged to somebody else. But when he saw her across the room, it was love at first sight. And he knew that he wanted to marry that person. And growing up in a small town, he always was taught that grow up, you help on a farm, you find who you love, and then you come back and help on the farm. But that's not the way his life or my mother's life would take their course. And my mother fell in love with my dad that night too, when she saw him across the room, and she knew and he knew that they were meant to be together. So it's a very touching subject. There's also a chapter called Suegro, and I don't speak Spanish as I mentioned, but I do incorporate a lot of Spanish into the book because that was some of my parents' background. Suegro means father-in-law in Spanish, but it doesn't just mean father-in-law. When a gentleman wants to get in good graces with his potential father-in-law, he calls him suegro out of respect. Now, his father, my dad's father, wanted to do a favor for my mother's father. Again, my dad had no idea my mother existed. And he told him to call him suegro. That way he would accept the free service the family was offering. So it's very ironic. And in the story, there is my mother talks about a pearl. My dad had their family was more affluent. So he wore silk shirts with pearl buttons, and one button fell off one day. My mother grabbed that button. She later gave it back to my father and taught him, you don't waste in life. There are people out there who are suffering, who are poorer. And he did learn it. And she always told us that story so that we wouldn't waste. Well, I wrote the chapter. I went to bed that night. And the next morning, I found a small little pearl sitting next to the computer. I don't know what necklace, I don't have an earrings they came from, but the most important thing is I felt like my mother was there telling me, I'm so glad you incorporated the pearl into that chapter. It made me feel very good. Some history about the book. I speak about my mother's neighbor in the book, and I changed his name, but in truthfulness, he did become the governor of Texas, and without saying his name, he was actually the governor who wrote with President Kennedy when he got assassinated. So that's a little bit of history. Another piece of history is my father's family. The King of Spain, King Philip V, sent them from the Canary Islands down, and they formed the first government of San Antonio. They also brought Christianity to San Antonio. They started the missions. And there's a suburb of San Antonio, which is called Floresville, hence the name Flores, Fidel and Alice Flores. And that is also part of the family history. So they have a lot of history from Spain. I use symbolism in the book. Summer Solitude's a painting by Rico Tomaso. It sits in my hallway today. And in there, the symbolism is my mother walks by that painting. It shows alone. It shows a woman alone, of course, solitude. And she admires it. But it's a symbolism of people when they're near death, how they sometimes pull away and they're alone before they start their other journey. Now, I bring that same painting back into later in the story, and it's with my father walking by it. So I use that. I also use the quarterback. My father was definitely a quarterback for the family. When my mother was ill, he helped lead our family, helped guide us into what to do. He also was a great role model for us. He went from kindergarten through high school as an adult, working a couple of jobs in the Air Force Reserve. He did that in 7 years because he wanted his family to know they could achieve something and they didn't have to quit in life. I use music in the book. I'm a singer-songwriter and I play guitar. And I use a song in one of the chapters. It's called Dad's Song. And I talk about how my dad inspired me. I wrote the song, actually part of it beforehand. And after my father passed away, I finished the song. But I do talk about it in my book. I also wrote a song called City Boy. And in there, my mother was in hospice, as I mentioned, and she was in a coma, and they didn't think she would wake up. And I'm singing this song, and it was a song we used to sing together. We're like the Judds, and we harmonized. And I was singing it to her, and I thought I heard her hum. I said, Dad, did she hum that? And he says, I think so. So I got out closer and I started the chorus, Platonic Love for Me and You. And when I started that, she hummed it in perfect pitch. We couldn't believe it. Within a couple of hours, she actually woke up. I was sitting there crying, and all of a sudden she was hugging me, patting my back, saying, what happened? And she didn't say it very good, but she said, what happened? And I was like, I can't believe that you are here hugging me and taking care of me when I should be taking care of you. And it was really touching, and really music helped motivate her. It helped our family. We told so many stories about around the kitchen table with music involved in there. I want to bring up the cover of the book too. So my daughter drew this picture when she was nearly 17, and it's my parents. It's a sketch from her wedding, from their wedding, and we used it at their 60th anniversary. And as I mentioned, we told so many stories around the kitchen table. There's a tablecloth type of background, and yellow was her favorite color. But I wanted to create a cover that was everyday. Something not like overly over the top, because I still was conveying that message that it's okay to be ordinary. It's okay to be just an everyday person, to make a difference in your life. So I was very proud of my daughter for her drawing, and she's an exceptional artist too. My book has gotten a 5-star ranking from Writer's Digest and Reader's Favorite. It's also available online. It's also on Indie and the Authors Marketing Guild, but it's available online on Amazon, at Walmart, Barnes and Noble. And also if you visit LorrieParise.com, and I think you can see how to spell my name. It's a little different, but I do have information on there. I have a bio, my blogs, and pictures, family pictures that mean so much to me. And if you live close in Houston, Spring, and Texas, and you purchase a book and want me to autograph, I'm sure I can get you a copy of that. Right now, I'm working on my second book. I am still taking the nonfiction route, but it's called Life Goes On, Letters to My Grandsons. And actually a little bit after my parents passed away, it's true, life does go on. And I had 2 grandsons born within 2 weeks of themselves. So I want to continue telling them the story. I want to tell them about our life now. And I kind of just talked about my parents' life, and I just think it's very important to continue the family legacy. And I noticed Julie had mentioned earlier about family, and they don't hate me, and they actually don't mind me talking about them. There are some family names I did change in the book, but overall, a lot of them wanted to be included in this memory. And that's kind of it. Alan, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And before we let you go, if you would spell out your last name, because people can't see the name on there. So spell out your actual website so people know it.
Okay, so my website is LorrieParise.com. So it's LorrieParise.com. It's like Paris with an E at the end, and I hope you check it out.
Authors Marketing Guild is a membership-owned organization designed to help authors succeed and learn how to better market and sell themselves and their books. Join us at authorsmarketingguild.com and receive so many benefits you'll wonder why you didn't join sooner. That's authorsmarketingguild.com.
Welcome to IndieLector.store, an online bookstore where the discriminating reader can find award-winning books. IndieLector.store is not a big corporation, so we can give up to 80% of the sales directly to the author. Help us support them by buying a great book at IndieLector.store. The 5th Annual Authors Marketing Event. 2 days of live seminars in marketing for authors. The only organization that certifies authors in marketing. Live and free to the first 100 authors registered. Sponsored by Bubblish, empowering entrepreneurs, and Indie Lector Store, paying authors for their fair share. Head to www.2020.authorsmarketingguild.com today.